Welcome back to the Boomerang Podcast. I'm Matt Geiger, and I have a very special guest today. He is a former Force Recon Marine, 8 deployments to Afghanistan, MMA champion fighter, and the author of Unfair Advantage and Saving Aziz, and the host of the Stay Dangerous podcast. I'm here with Mr. Chad Robichaux.
Good to be on, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
So, I know when we spoke before, I know that a lot of people talk about, your combat history. I mean, you're an American legend, no question about it. For the viewers that maybe don't know your background, can you give them maybe just kind of a, what you've done in the military, kind of your background?
Yeah. I don't know about legend, but I've
Legend.
been super privileged to serve with like some of the most amazing people. I did 14 years of special operations. I started off in the Marine Corps, 84 years of service to my family. So very long history of World War II, Korea. My father was an infantry Marine in Vietnam. I did 8 deployments to Afghanistan I was a Force Recon Marine. Both my sons served in the Marine Corps. One still serving. The other was an Anglican Marine and served in Afghanistan as well. So two generations in Afghanistan. But for me, I was being a Force Recon Marine. I had the opportunity after 9/11 to try out for a JSOC task force, where that's where the premier special operations units are.
Is that like Delta?
Delta,
Right.
SEAL Team 6, TFO, like all of those units. And so I had the chance to try out and went to one of those units and served. The Marine Corps doesn't have a presence in JSOC, so we have slots that the Marine Corps gets to jump into those billets. And I got one of those billets and did 8 deployments to Afghanistan as a AFO, Advanced Force Operator, which most people don't know what that job is. So just kind of in simplistic terms, it's like kind of being undercover in the military. You work in a singleton capacity by yourself with local nationals, and you go out ahead of your assault force to build all the clandestine logistics to put your assaulters on target to capture or kill bad guys. And so I worked independently with Aziz as started off my interpreter, my teammate.
Yep.
And we did all 8 of my deployments to Afghanistan, did hundreds of clandestine logistics operations to put our assaulters on target to capture or kill. And our time would have been whoever's on the top 10 list,
Right.
And for the Taliban in Afghanistan, and Bin Laden being number 1,
Yep.
to whoever's number 10, and that list always rotated. But yeah, so that's what I did in Afghanistan, and that led to the book you talked about, Saving Aziz,
Right.
which Aziz did 16 years at JSOC.
Incredible story.
Yeah, he's an
Incredible
guy.
story.
We went back to get him.
He's down in Texas.
He's in Texas. Yeah, we went when the withdrawal happened. I made a decision to go put a small team together of civilians who were special operations veterans, and to go get Aziz, his wife, and 6 kids, and that led to God just orchestrating an incredible opportunity to not just get Aziz and his wife and 6 kids, but we got 17,000 people out. So and that was captured in the book, Saving Aziz, and
Amazing.
being made in a movie. So yeah,
Incredible. It's like, I'm almost curious. What's the status in Afghanistan these days? Is the Taliban in control? What's going on over there?
Yeah, I mean, we basically, the United States government, went behind the backs of the entire international community to undermine the safety and freedom of the world, not just the United States, not just our national security,
Right.
but of the world, to remove the United States military and Bagram Air Force Base out of Afghanistan and hand it over. It would say, on the surface, it looks like they handed it over to the Taliban, which they did, but really handed over to all of our enemies, which would be, China, Iran, and Pakistan ISI. That's who really run Afghanistan now. But the Taliban's the face of it, and Taliban run the country. There's 40 million Afghans there, 20 million women and little girls that are, have no human rights at all, being sexually enslaved as young as 9 years old. And it's a safe haven for terrorism. So much, that al-Zawahiri was, walking around freely, right after we left, and the White House is high-fiving that we killed him. I'm like, what was he doing there in the first place, walking around freely
Right.
in Kabul? Because we created a terrorist safe haven there that people been, and it's going to result in a terrorist attack against the West, and we're already seeing it.
Right. Do you think that our government, factions of our government, the deep state, if you will, do you think that they're funding these people?
Well, I mean, funding's. I mean, for sure, we're secretly funding them because we know you see planes when President Obama and
Obama was
President,
directing them to do airstrikes so that ISIS could expand. That's what I heard.
Yeah, I mean you got Obama and you got Vice President Biden, right? You can't let him off the hook, or flying pallets of cash in the middle of the night, billions of dollars in the middle of the night into Iran on aircraft that are not manifested or
in
documented,
foreign
right?
currency, so that they couldn't get.
So I mean, so clearly we're funding our enemies, but you just have to look at something like Afghanistan, and a lot of people were like, "What was the conspiracy there?" Well, and I could spend hours, by the way, talking about this, so I'll be careful that I don't get too far into it. But when you look at something like the withdrawal of Afghanistan, you have to ask why the immediacy and who benefits.
Right.
That's the question. That's the right question to ask.
Who benefits?
Right? The Bagram Air Force Base is the most strategic. It still would be the most strategic place in the globe in today's current conflicts. It sits between Iraq, Iran, Russia, and China. And so for the U.S. military to remove that, it doesn't serve any of the interests of the United States, because that's the most strategic place on the globe. The international community, entire international community, were participating at Bagram Air Force Base. The Germans, the French, the British, everybody was participating there. And they were participating in a way to support and advise the Afghan National Army and Afghan National Police so that they can, not us, they can fight terrorism in the mountains of Afghanistan, fight the Taliban and ISIS there. We only had, at one point when President Trump was there, 2,500 troops there. At the time of the withdrawal, we had 4,000 troops.
Didn't he invite the head of the Taliban over?
Yeah.
Right? He had him sit with U.S. troops.
Yeah, and basically, I wouldn't say there's a peace deal, but if you look at from 2018, after President Trump dropped that MOB, to that point, there was no attacks directly on U.S. troops by the Taliban.
Right.
I mean, they were attacking, but they were not attacking U.S. troops.
Right.
Because they knew what would happen. President Trump had told them, like, I know where you live, I know who your family is.
Yeah.
Here's your son's name, this your wife's name. Like, there will be consequences, right? And so that strength, proved to be, save our troops. But when President Biden made the announcement to do the withdrawal, he didn't talk to the international partners that were participating there. He didn't talk to the Afghan government that we spent 20 years putting in place. He didn't talk to the ANA, the Afghan National Army, Afghan National Police. The only people he talked to that we know of is the Taliban. The deal was struck behind closed doors, the Doha Agreement. And people will say, well, oh yeah, President Trump started that. President Trump had terms, not a timeline. Not only that, President Trump never agreed to forfeit Bagram Air Force Base. It would have stayed part of the international community to support and advise the Afghan. And we would have kept the presence there. We would have kept the special operations presence.
Sounds intentional.
It's very intentional. And so now it goes back to the question of who has to gain, right? Who has to gain? China has to gain.
Right.
China and Iran and Pakistan ISI. Pakistan ISI from intelligence standpoint, China from intelligence standpoint, Iran from intelligence standpoint. All three of those by military strategic standpoint. The Taliban gets their power back, their dictatorship back, their women back, their tribal ways of life back, that place to launch terrorism. But what China mainly got was the lithium mineral rights in the Hindu Kush Mountains.
Right.
Trillions, they say trillions of dollars, probably an unlimited amount of dollars. I said this in like June of 2021. I got labeled as conspiracy theorist for saying this. However, August 31st, we left. By September 1st, China had already negotiated the mineral rights for the Hindu Kush Mountains with the Taliban and have those rights now. So they have all the rights to lithium in those mountains. In addition to that, Iran has oil that's sanctioned that they can't sell. China needs oil and wanted it from Iran. The only thing that was stopping them from moving that oil geographically, the only thing that was stopping them was the U.S. military in Afghanistan.
Right.
As soon as we were gone, they started moving that sanctioned oil across into China. We know that to be true. So who had to gain? Our enemies, right? Yep. China, Iran, Pakistan. That's who had to gain. And so the very clear conclusion is that we sold out to China.
And something I actually heard was that those pellets of cash that Obama sent over to Iran, I heard Iran just took something off the top on that, and that actually ended up in the Ukraine.
That would not surprise me. I don't know that to be true, but it would not surprise me.
I've heard that, and I can't say if it's true or not, but you actually recently did some stuff in the Ukraine. What are you able to talk about over there?
Well, I've done, since the Russian invasion in Ukraine, I've done about 10 trips there. My team has had a permanent presence there since the week before the invasion because we've seen it coming. And so we had a guy, if you read some of my books, Sea Spray is his name that we call him. He was there a week before. We were monitoring it. Russia came across the border. I ended up going. I was there. I was in Ukraine like just a few days after Russia came across the border, and initially went there to help move Americans out because one of the reasons that happened was because I believe President Biden gave Russia the green light to come across when Putin sees what happens in Afghanistan. He sees how we buckled to the Taliban, right? He puts 100,000 troops on the border. He flexes to see how U.S. is going to respond. And President Biden closed our embassies and consulate, removed all the diplomats out, and moved out our troops. Now people say, oh, we didn't have a lot of troops there. One troop is a lot because if one troop gets injured, that's an Article 5 violation in NATO, and Putin is crazy, but he's not stupid, right? So he would do. So you could say, well, they didn't have a lot there. It doesn't matter if you have one troop in Ukraine. So by Biden moving out of our troops, it basically forces the rest of NATO to say, okay, now we have to move out our people. And then Putin says, they just gave me the green light to cross the border. And that's exactly what happened and what initiated the Ukrainian-Russian war. And so what I went in there to do was to help move people that were left behind, Americans, vulnerable people groups, personnel that would be high risk to move them out. And we moved several people out, including the Fox News reporter Benjamin Hall. If you knew, he was catastrophically wounded. Myself and another 6 of my teammates went and we evacuated Benjamin Hall because the U.S. military was not allowed to cross the border to go get him. The Central Intelligence Agency, we were working directly with them, who contacted us and said, hey, we can't go. We're not allowed to go. Will you guys go get him? And so being a surrogate civilians, we were allowed to go get him. And when we moved him across, it was a very long and complex thing, but we got him across the border. He was, it was a clear, agreeable thing to do. He has a wife at home, 2 little girls, and he's American. We went and got him, but when we got him, we moved him across the border and coordinating with U.S. military. As soon as we crossed him across the border, the U.S. military was waiting. 82nd Airborne was waiting with a helicopter. Some of our guys got in a helicopter and flew out with them. They took him to, they flew him to Aeromedical C-130 and then flew him to Landstuhl, Germany. Eventually made it back to San Antonio. And then the next day we went back and recovered the bodies of the rest of his teammate, Pierre. I drove Pierre's body out myself. And so then we moved in to what Mighty Oaks does. And what Mighty Oaks does, my foundation, we do stuff here stateside for veterans and first responders, Midas Gold Group. You guys just wrote us a check to support a program, and thank you guys for that support.
We love doing it. I know, James, obviously being in the Marine Corps, I never served. I wish I did.
Yeah. Especially
after looking at your history. I wish I could have done even a fraction, but we love doing it. Question about the Ukraine. Why do we have all these politicians with their kids on natural gas boards there? Pelosi, right? Pelosi's kid, John Kerry's kid, Hunter Biden. Right.
Because of corruption. Because they can make a lot of money. Look, we're sending hundreds of millions of dollars there right now, and there's no government oversight. What's the total right now that we sent?
I think it's like $500 billion.
Yeah, it's
something absurd, and I bet you it's a lot more than even what they're telling us.
Yeah, I think the last number I saw was like 200 billion.
Something crazy.
But I think it's much more. But nonetheless, like that money that's going there, whether it has no congressional oversight. It's written that way. It has no congressional. Right. So there's no accountability. Like anytime anybody's been in business, like if you're gonna approve a budget, you have to have line items of where that money's going, and you have to have accountability. That's where it was spent. The money going to Ukraine has no. Now I've gotten a lot of heat. People are like, "Why?" Because I've done all this stuff in Ukraine, and my Mighty Oaks team is going there, and we train some of the Ukrainian civilian troops in medical care. We train and certify chaplains so that they get the right mental and spiritual. So I've got a lot of heat. Like, why are you guys going there? Zelensky's corrupt, and we're sending hundreds of billions of dollars there. And I'm like, well, first of all, like. Yes, Zelensky is corrupt. I think he's a horrible human being.
But it's not about those people.
But so is Biden. Yeah, so is Biden's corrupt, right? But I'm not there for Zelensky. I'm not there for Biden. I'm there for the innocent people who's caught in the middle of this, right? Who's a victim of this, and we're there to help them. And I just won't let my politics get in the way of my compassion for people. And I think anytime somebody lets their politics get in the way of their compassion for people, you should probably reevaluate your politics, right?
Absolutely.
And so I have a heart for these people, and I'm going to help when God gives me an opportunity to help, and that's why we're there. But man, this money is is not going where I've been on the front lines. I've been to Kharkiv and Odessa, Izum. I've been 2 hours past the Russian lines, where Ukrainian troops out there do not have these billions of dollars. It's not going there.
It's not going there.
Yeah. So and we've I can't say who, but I personally escorted members of U.S. Congress that wanted to go see for themselves that it wasn't going there. And like good patriots that are serving Congress.
I could probably guess some names.
Yeah, and so I personally have escorted them there to see for themselves, and they are disgusted, and they,
It's the deep, to my understanding, Ukraine from the bad guy, the corrupt. It's the deep state money laundering capital.
It is. It's where money laundering happens. I mean, it's why we put Zelensky in place.
Right.
When I say we put, the Clintons, the Obamas, and the Bidens put Zelensky in place. And now, right, this is how you cash out. Biden comes in office. They move everybody out. Allow Putin to go in, start a war. The war can be over in Trump says 24 hours. I say probably a week, like somewhere in between there.
Right.
You can end this thing. But they needed to create this,
right,
to create a system to be able to take print U.S. taxpayer dollars. Right, I won't say take U.S. because it doesn't exist anyway. To print U.S. taxpayer dollars to move there, to go into the pockets of not just Ukrainian corrupt politicians, but U.S. corrupt politicians.
I heard early on, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard that there were bioweapons labs in the Ukraine where they were brewing up the next pandemics.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they are. I haven't seen any myself. I've been curious while I was out there. Chernobyl, yeah, it was just slipped my mind. And I've been told by people in Ukraine that it's not really an unsafe place. It's just they say that They say that to keep people from going there. There's bioweapons labs there. That they say that
Bill Gates is operating.
Yeah,
that's what these people are doing. They're just playing.
I wasn't going there to test it out, but I've heard that from the people in Ukraine that hey, it's not really.
I'm just curious,
it's just like they say that to keep people away.
It's like hearing you kind of confirm some of that stuff and hearing from people. That's like what I was kind of looking for, because I know my audience. It's like we hear about this stuff and it's like, how the hell do we know? We have no clue. We have to talk to somebody like you who's been there. Yeah, right.
I'll tell you one thing. There's been lots of conspiracies. There's been the conspiracy about
I love conspiracies.
I just heard recently the difference between conspiracy and prophecy. You know the difference between?
Tell me.
6 months.
6 months, yeah, exactly.
Now it's probably like more than 2 months. Difference between conspiracy and
now
prophecy
it's like a week.
Like 2 months. Yeah. So, but like this white supremacy Ukraine, man, I've been all through the front line. I haven't seen anything like that.
The Azov Battalion.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like that. I mean, if there was a civil war in the United States and one, guy with a mullet from Oklahoma put a Confederate flag on his body armor, then it would be like, oh, they're all that way,
right?
And so that may have happened in Ukraine, but man, these people out there fighting, these citizen soldiers, as most of them are, they're just like, they don't care about the politics. They're fighting for their families, they're fighting for their freedom, they're fighting for their forms. They don't care about politics. They don't care about. They just want to be left alone, man. They're very simple, good people that I met out there, and they just like. They don't want to be fighting. They don't want to be part of this.
The whole situation's messed up.
And that's the consequence, right? These people these corrupt politicians are using them, make millions or billions of dollars to put in their own pockets, all at the cost of these people's lives.
That's the sickest part about it. That's the sickest part about it.
I've been to apartment buildings, like there's one apartment complex I went to. 4 apartment complexes were all hit by airstrikes. By the Russians, so that's real. Like the buildings were just like all systematically. This is civilian. No men are there. All the men are fighting. So all women and children in these apartment buildings just bombed, leveled. And then I went to Izum to identify mass graves and personally identify mass graves of all women and children, hands bound up behind their backs, executed. About 1,400 of them.
Now,
it's real.
Do you think that was the Russians doing that, or do you think it might be?
It was the Russians.
It was the Russians.
For this, like I said, I can't speak to what I didn't see, but this specifically in a Zoom, this is Russians executing them. I mean, I was there with the Ukrainians when they retook Izum, which was taken for like 6 months, and this wouldn't have been like 1,400 people executed at one time. This would have been over 6 months. People that would have like been defiant or resisting,
right.
Or the Russians would have just executed in these pits,
right?
And they tried to burn them, but it's hard to burn bodies, and they try to cover them up. And so what happened was they reported it, and then someone called a SOLO, Special Operations Liaison Officer in the CIA, told us like, hey, we we don't know if this is true because obviously Ukraine wants to report stuff like this for more money. And so you guys can be in this area. Can you get eyes on, get American eyes on? So we went, myself and C-Spray went in there and got eyes on. And and you could see the Russian tanks that were there, where the Russians were living. And a lot, I counted probably, but I stopped counting at close to 100 dead Russians that were in that battle, like they were just being killed. And then we identified that. And then we actually got caught and the Russians collapsed behind us. And it was probably some of the most kinetic fighting that I've seen even in my time in Afghanistan. Like we got caught behind the Russian lines and we had an indirect fire hitting within like 100 yards of us and MiGs flying over, dropping by. It was pretty crazy.
How do you do it, man?
It took like 2 days to get out of there.
How do you do it? Incredible.
I just like something. I have no interest in being involved in any of this anymore. By the way, I did nothing to prove, nothing to. There's nothing that I desire to do anymore. It just like. For some reason, I'll go back to this. Mother Teresa has a quote. Say, God will never give you more than you can handle. I just wish you didn't trust me so much.
Yeah.
I think God's just continued to create opportunities for me to be able to use skills, experience, and backgrounds and networks to collaborate people together to do good. And that's primarily what I do. Like, I think I get, it's very easy to see the highlights of being in a place like that, but primarily what I do isn't me going out and do stuff like this. Primarily what I'm able to do is use the relationships to collaborate efforts together to help people in need. And, I know a lot of people, I've networked a lot of people. Like the thing in Afghanistan, I get a lot of credit for it, but the truth is in 3 days, I was able to, based on relationships and friendships that I had, bring a group of people together to all come together, and God orchestrate this miraculous thing to help people. Tons of organizations, just great people that want to help others.
Amazing.
And that's what I think I've been able to do more than anything else.
Incredible.
And sometimes it puts me in a place to where I'm actually physically in these environments and get the chance to help people.
Wild stuff. Well, politics. No one ever really talks to you about what you think is going to happen in 2024. What do you see playing out?
Well, I mean, the clear picture is not. There's no one in America that could beat President Trump in a free and fair election.
Do we have an election? Do you think that we're
that's the question,
right?
Are we gonna have a free and fair election?
Right.
They are gonna cheat. When I say they, the left is going to cheat.
They're gonna have to.
They have to cheat. But can they cheat enough?
I mean, they're bringing in the illegals. I mean, something to consider is we're about 3 hours from the border from where we sit right now. I mean, are terrorists getting in here? Are they building cells in the United States? What's your view on that?
Well, I know for a fact, this isn't conspiracy, by the way. I know for a fact, like through relationships that I have still in the United States government, I have some very high level relationships in the United States government, that at least a minimum of 500 per day that are actually being caught from Syria and Iran, fighting age males with no women or children. 500 per day. That's not counting the Chinese. That's not counting.
And those are the people that are caught.
This is 500 Syrians or Iranians, but they're not being caught and held. They're being caught, documented, and let go.
Right. Their court dates in 8 years from now.
Yeah, these are fighting age males with no women or children. These are Muslim Iranians and Syrians. I don't know the number on Chinese, but that's a lot. Fighting age males with no women or children. So that's just do the math on 500. 500.
That's an insane amount of people.
Yeah, and I feel like I could take over a small country with 100 of my guys.
Right.
And
they're bringing in
they're bringing in tens of thousands. And so if you can't steal the election through mail-in ballots, do you create a terrorist attack? Do you allow a terrorist attack to happen in the United States that pauses the election, that postpones an election? I don't know. I mean, that's all of it sounds crazy to me, but nothing's off the table now.
That's where my thinking is. It's like, I hate to think like that, but when you see these numbers of people coming in, it's so insane that, and if Trump wins, a lot of people.
Who else would allow it that had the national security interest of our country in mind? Like, why would you allow that to happen if you had the national security interest of our country? Like, no sane leader would ever allow fighting age males in the tens of thousands to invade another country.
Makes me think that we could see
never in history
warfare on our soil for the first time, right? It's always been somewhere else, and everybody says, "Oh, it's happening over here in some place across the world." I think just based on common sense, it's like just from a common sense standpoint, you just look at it, you're like, what if these people coordinate and start? Could be multiple terror attacks throughout the country at the same time.
Yeah, well, I mean,
What do we do? Do we have the military to protect us, or do we have to protect ourselves?
well, I mean, you talk about the military protecting us. It's there's a misuse, a deliberate misuse of our national security resources. The Federal Air Marshal Service, which I was one of the first Federal Air Marshals after 9/11, just helped stand up that program. And a lot of my guys that I trained are still in the Federal Air Marshals. And so again, this is not conspiracy. You can look it up. All the Federal Air Marshals who, before President Biden took office, were flying around the world on planes that were the operations center said, okay, this is a high risk flight. This flight has people that are on a no flight list on it that we're following, terrorists, people, that's who the air marshals are following, and making sure the national security interests are in mind. After January 6th, about 30% of the air marshals went down to the border to process people and let them free in our country. The other rest of the air marshals, the other 70% of our air marshals, this will make it. This guy, and people would think it's conspiracy, but I'm telling you, look it up. It's real. When I say look it up, the president of the Air Marshal Union has came out and said it. All of those, that 70% of air marshals, their job now is not flying and tracking terrorists, flying and tracking people who are on January 6th list.
Oh, I've heard about this. Yeah, so it's insane.
That's where air marshals are allocated to.
Yeah, and they put the what they do. They had the FBI going to school board meetings for parents that were protesting against the ridiculous sexualization of children.
Yeah,
right? They're putting them on terror lists or something.
Yeah, so not only do you have this open border, which has nothing to do with immigration anymore, nothing. You have people that any sane person would say these are high risk national security threats. Fighting age males from ideological countries like Iran and Syria that hate America, with no women and children coming to our country, tens of thousands of them, and then you're reallocating all of the resources that are meant to fight against that to our own citizens.
Where does it end?
That's not conspiracy, by the way. That's
a fact.
That's a fact.
That's a fact.
That's happening.
I've heard that. Same.
that is happening, and we're in a scary position right now.
How do we fix it?
We have to uproot the current leadership. There's no other way. The United States government has been weaponized against the people, we the people.
Right.
And I mean, look, I'm not. I was a surrogate on President Trump's campaign. I was a veterans policy surrogate. I am not a diehard president. I'll say this, even if he was in this room, I served on his campaign, and I would serve on his campaign again in 2024. But I am not a diehard like Donald Trump's the savior of the world. But I'll tell you, he has had the right policies and the right mindset to put our country back on track. And that's why I was a surrogate for him in the 2020 campaign. I championed him in 2016. I got to meet him and worked with him. In 2018, he appointed me as the chairman of the White House's Faith-Based Coalition for Veteran Affairs. I was an appointee for him, and I proudly served with him. We got executive orders changed, and I was a veterans policy surrogate in 2020. And I would do it again because he's puts the right policies forth for the American people, and he's not a politician. And I think right now he's the only person that is on any that's going to be in a ballot that has the ability to turn this country around.
But they're not going to let him back in. I mean, they're trying to take him off ballots. I mean,
yeah. Well, the one thing about that, when they took him off the ballot in Colorado, I was like, this isn't going to stand, because I don't even think the Democrats are willing to go that far, and I think that's why they let it get flipped. Because the last time somebody's been taken off a ballot, to my knowledge,
Civil War
was Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah,
and it led to
a civil war ensued.
Yeah, a civil war ensued. So I think Americans are will take it on chin enough to be like, oh man, there was probably election integrity. The election was probably stolen from us, but we'll get them next time. They kind of like take that. But when you say you can't vote, like 50%, at least a minimum of 50% of Colorados, you can't vote for the candidate of your choice. I think that's the line where
those are fighting words.
Yeah, where Americans. And I don't believe we live in a free country, by the way.
I don't either.
America's not a free country.
No.
We have the most laws of any country in the world.
Mm-hmm.
We're the most incarcerated of any country in the world. America's not a free country, but
upside down.
But most Americans do believe that we're free people, and because under the fact that we do believe we're free people, like when we get our freedoms taken away like that, we tend to fight back.
It's going to be, I think, 2024 The way I kind of see 2024 is I don't think you have any more elections until you litigate 2020.
Yeah.
Right. 2020, there's a movie out by a guy named David K. Clements. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but it's called Let My People Go.
I haven't.
And he breaks down, he did a speech actually at Mike Lindell's Cyber Symposium.
Okay.
And I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to go after, instead of going directly at the fraud in the last election, they want to go after the underlying crimes. And the way he kind of put it is he said he called them the election cartel, kind of relating them to drug cartels, right? And what they essentially did was they want to go after like Katie Hobbs here in Arizona, right? Have you heard about her?
No.
Somebody came forward as a insurance agent. She's actually out here in Scottsdale. I forget her name, but she came forward at like a town hall meeting and said, I have evidence that Katie Hobbs has been taking payments from the drug cartels, right? And her election out here is completely illegitimate. My ballot wouldn't even go in the machine to put it in box 3. Total nonsense. But I think she's involved in taking payoffs through things like phony home sales, right? So I think what they're going to do is they're going to go after these people on the underlying crimes of, okay, you misrepresented this home sale, right? You're taking money from these groups, this cartel, right? We'll get you on that stuff, and right, we'll finish it up with the election fraud. So I think I could see a scenario where this year you could start seeing some of these politicians maybe start getting arrested. I mean, how do you solve it? How do you get these people out?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you guys start prosecuting.
You have to.
Yeah, you have to
right?
start prosecuting. Yeah.
So I mean, I just don't see another election in 2024 without solving 2020.
Yeah.
I just don't see it.
Yeah.
What about you?
If they want to keep Trump out of the White House, I almost think they have to stop it. They have to kill the election.
They do.
They have to kill the election because I don't think they could cheat enough.
I mean, I think about
I don't think they could cheat enough that it would be that lopsided.
You know how the media calls it the retribution presidency, right? If Trump got back on.
Okay, yeah.
What about the unredacted FISA report?
Right.
Right. What if Trump reveals that? To my understanding, that unredacted FISA report, that's got the text messages between like Peter Strzok, right, and all these different people on the 7th floor of the FBI. That's got them with the insurance policy. And the insurance policy was not Russia. Right. The insurance policy, I think, was they were talking about in emails and texts that they were going to kill him.
Right.
They're going to assassinate him. Have you heard anything like that?
No, I haven't. But I do think Trump was intending to I think he was waiting for a second term because he was told to. He was illy advised to wait till a second term to drop the bomb on all this stuff.
I mean,
he was betrayed. Not only he was betrayed, American people were betrayed by people that Trump let close to him. Trump let close to him, and I don't think he'll make that mistake again. And I think if he comes in, he'll surround himself with. He'll be more wise about who he surrounds himself with. He won't let insiders in like he did before. I already see that. Now with some of the people he's aligning himself with, and he'll also won't hesitate like he did before to release some of this stuff. I think he's just gonna expose it all.
Yeah,
I hope so.
I hope so too.
Yeah.
I've heard all kinds of crazy things that we could talk forever. I'll ask you one last question, which is kind of a classic last question. But Michelle Obama, man or woman?
Big Mike.
Big Mike.
Yeah,
all
Big Mike.
Right,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
Big Mike. Yeah.
It's Big Mike. Yeah.
And that could be the big surprise from the left is they slide Big Mike in.
So you're dancing on Ellen, the Ellen show.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Horrible.
Big Mike,
Horrible. Awesome, man.
No baby pictures, no maternity pictures.
No maternity pictures. I used to tell people, I'm like, I'll give you $100 if you can find her pregnant.
Yeah.
And there's nothing out there.
No.
Crazy. Well, I'm sure we could talk forever, but
just have to maybe catch her walking out of a Mexican food restaurant. They go belly full of tortilla chips. Terrible. That's what most you're gonna get.
Oh. Well, I appreciate you coming on the podcast, man.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Awesome having you. You want to tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty easy to find. I'm mainly most active on Instagram, but when they're not suppressing me, so you might have to, depending. But Instagram's where I stay most active. ChadRobichaux.com is my website, and then my foundation, Mighty Oaks Foundation.org, is where you can. Any veterans, first responder, need any help, that's where we can help. And if you want to support that effort, MightyOaksPrograms.org. It's an awesome charity to be involved in. We do a ton of work in saving lives and restoring families and changing legacies for our warriors. And then my podcast, Stay Dangerous, StayDangerous.com.
Absolutely. We'll put some links in the description.
Cool.
Thanks for coming out.
Absolutely.